Welcome to Geek on Film with your host, Robbie Holmes. Welcome to episode 15 of season 3 of Geek on Film. This week, I'm going to be spending some time catching up on some television that I've been watching. It feels like as we come into the Emmy season, there's a backlog of good television at all different levels. So I'm happy to catch up on some of that. And then main review of Mission Impossible, The Final Reckoning. Let's start off with 3 different types of shows. So we have Adolescence, which is a miniseries that if you have not heard about it, you should. Here's what our friends at IMDb have to say about it. When a 13-year-old is accused of murder of a classmate, his family, therapist, and detective in charge are all left asking what really happened. This was created by Stephen Graham and Jack Thorne. This show is 4 episodes. Stephen Graham plays the father of the student who is in question. So he plays Eddie Miller. Owen Cooper plays Jamie Miller. And you have Christine Tremecco playing Mandy Miller, the mother. And his sister is played by Emily Pease, Lisa Miller. Those are the majority of the people we meet in the first episode. There's lots of other people that come in and out of this show. Let's just start with the conceit of this show, which I think has been talked about now, is that every episode is basically shot as a oneer. So that means from the beginning of the episode to the end of the episode is a single shot. It's truly impressive. It has accomplished something that not just for the use of the idea of a oneer, but it also adds to the intensity of what's happening in the show. I feel like a lot of times when you're watching something that's super intense, the cut to black or the switch perspective or the move to another portion of the story gives you, the audience, a breath. And I feel like this show never gives you a breath. From the beginning of episode 1 to the end of episode 1, there's no breathing. Beginning of episode 2 to the end of episode 2, again, no breathing. It's really, truly astounding what is pulled off in this show and how impactful it was. I have watched it. I'm very glad that I did. I feel like it has been a big discussion in a lot of podcasts, but we'll do a quick rundown of each episode. So the first episode, police break down the door of the Miller's family home. Teenage Jamie is arrested and taken in for questioning, but insists he's done nothing wrong. Episode 2, the police look for answers and the weapon at Jamie's school. They can't get any leads from his friends until D.I. Bascom's son offers to help. So we follow a couple of detectives that are going into the school to try to find out what's going on. I think as much as the first episode is astounding and breaking, it is unbelievable what is pulled off in episode 3, where Jamie meets a psychologist and he's reluctant to speak at first, but eventually he opens up and his complex feelings towards Katie. And then the final episode is on Eddie's birthday. The Millers are trying to celebrate like everything's normal, so the father's birthday, but a series of upsetting events threatens to send the family over the edge. This episode made me cry a lot. Episode 1 was powerful and emotional, and the end of it was really rough. Episode 2 is really sad, and episode 3 is a little scary, and episode 4 is devastating. I think that episode 3 is probably the best season of the show, but I think the culminating episode in 4 is the one that really drove it home for me and basically says this is the best limited series that has been created this year. Okay, it's on Netflix. You should go watch it. Even thinking about it is making me emotional. All right, let's jump over to The Pit. I was a person who was a big fan of the show that this is definitely not a logical successor to, called ER. I absolutely used to watch a lot of television shows, especially medical series. I will say that this show is scratching an itch I didn't realize that I had, is the way I would put it. So our friends at IMDb have this as the daily lives of healthcare professionals in a Pittsburgh hospital as they juggle personal crises, workplace politics, and emotional toll of treating critically ill patients, revealing the resilience required in this noble calling. It is created by R. Scott Geminal, and there are a lot of characters in this show, and that is the biggest complaint I have heard is how many people get thrown at you at the very beginning. But if you hang in there, it will pay off, is the way I would put it. Dr. Michael Rabinovich is played by Noah Weil. He is the anchor of the show. He is probably in 70% of every episode. He is astounding. He's, back in, if you think about his ER days, you're like that young, fresh faced kid was a nice add on to the cast. And then you get to where we are today, and you see that he's a steady hand that we can anchor an entire show around, and we care. We believe in his empathy. We believe in who he is, what he brings to the table. It's really, really impressive. There are a lot of doctors because this is an ER. His right hand is Dr. Heather Collins, played by Tracy Feckar. And then there is Dr. Frank Langdon, played by Patrick Ball. The head nurse in this, who basically is the air traffic controller for all of the ER, is Dana Evans, played Catherine Lanassa. Like every other medical show, it is broken down into who is the attending, who is a couple years into the residency, who are new doctors. So Dr. Frank Langdon, Tracy, and Dr. Heather Collins, and Dr. Samara Mohan, and Dr. Casey McKay. Casey's played by Fiona Dourif, and Dr. Samara Mohan is played by Supriya Ganesh, our residents. And then I think, if I remember correctly, and then we get a whole cast of new doctors that are dropped upon us. So we meet Dr. Melissa King, who's played by Taylor Durden, Dr. Trinity Santos, played by Issa Briones, Dr. Dennis Whitaker, played by Garen Howell, and Dr. Victoria Javadi, played by Shabana Aziz. Then there are other people. We can go layer by layer here. There are a lot of people in this show, and there is a huge amount of payoff for you getting to know all of them. Each of their quirks, their foibles, their personalities is what makes the show happen, right? Like, it is 15 hours of a single day in the lives of these doctors in this specific ER. And it starts off in a way that you're sort of just thrown back into the idea of what a medical show is. It is like, here's a bunch of cases, here are a bunch of doctors, here are some of their quirks. Initially, it starts out as like, this person is cocky, and this person is too much of an oversharer, and this doctor's too slow, and this doctor's having a bad day, and then it breaks down from there as to why. And you start to get a little more and a little more, and the aperture continues to open on all these characters. And by the end, I mean, we have a pretty full understanding of, I don't know, a dozen characters in 16 episodes of television. It's pretty impressive what's able to be pulled off. There's this way that they had to think about it, right? Say you were going in and going to follow a single shift of this ER, it would be 12 hours, but they end up being able to run 16 episodes. And the question is why and how? Well, there's a big event that happens, and that event causes a shift in what the ER's response has to be. And then that brings in some people. So this is the day shift, and the night shift is arriving to come and spell them, which then brings us new doctors that we're like, thank God there are new people here to help these people who are exhausted. And that is an amazing way to like unfurl this show. We get to meet more doctors, and we're excited to meet those more doctors because they are all here to help the people we've just spent hours getting to know. It's a fantastic show. I can see exactly why everybody's been talking about it. And it's the kind of thing that I wasn't excited to see. I was like, I don't know that I need to see a more graphic and a more explicit version of what I grew up on by moving this from, television to a streaming platform. But I think what they did was they didn't have to shoot around as much. They definitely in episode 1 give you a moment where you're like, this is a little more than you're going to get on TV. And because we're on, it feels like they're pushing the boundary just enough for you to be like, hey, we can do a little differently now that we're on HBO Max. Take that as a grain of salt if you are not a person who is okay with some medical madness, some things that are a little squeamish. There were definitely times where I had to like take a breath. I also watched it and binged it like over a couple of days, like I think a 2 to 3 day period. So I spent a lot of time with these doctors and a lot of time in this world, and definitely was finding myself overwhelmed, I would say. There are some real standouts here. I will say that Dr. Melissa King, played by Taylor Dearden, is charming and empathetic and caring and different, and is able to show a whole lot of personality without doing a ton in the beginning. And then you slowly get this unfurling of who she is and how she deals, and why she is as empathetic as she is, but why she's as closed off. And I think it's really fantastic. And I think, yeah, I really just I fell in love with the show, and I'm kind of excited that they're coming back. I know they're been renewed, so I'm excited to see the next incarnation of this show. I hear a rumor that it's going to be set around 4th of July, a single day in 4th of July at the pit. Boy, I can't imagine what that's going to give us. That is on HBO Max. You should definitely watch that. Andor is in an era filled with danger, deception, and intrigue. Cassian Andor embarks on a path that is destined to turn him into a rebel hero. This show was created by Tony Gilroy, and has a huge cast of people that are in support. But we should probably focus on season 2. So season 2 of Andor is really broken up into 4 chunks, each one of them 3 days within a year leading up to Rogue One. The first block is there's a bunch more table stakes that needed to be set after season 1, especially when there was a possibility of this going 5 seasons. And you can feel a little bit of that in the first couple of episodes. Honestly, kind of up through episode 6, I would say. And then everything sort of goes off. It is unbelievable sort of where we go from there. We end up on Gorman, which has been this sort of, it exists in the sort of Star Wars canon that there have been, that there has been a rebellion or a put down or of the people of Gorman there before. And then what we see is this idea that like we have the characters that we've gotten to know, and Gorman has become important because they need to get a mineral or the substrate of the planet to basically insulate the Death Star. So they don't care about whether or not they destroy the planet, but they need to get out this specific chemical that will help them, or the specific stone that will allow them to build what they're looking to build. And that forces them to basically manipulate the people on the ground, the rebels in Gorman, to do something so that way they have the ability to just come in and crush them. So they're doing like, a bunch of like seeding of PR. There's a whole bunch of news articles. There's a whole bunch of people talking about what is going on in Gorman. But this is not just on Gorman, but it is everywhere. You see it on like the Coruscant news where they're talking about what is happening in Gorman. There's a lot of like negative Gorman postulating, which is pretty impressive. And then we get through all of that, and there's a huge, Gorman rebellion that takes place, and a killing of a huge amount of the people of Gorman. Cassian is there. He is supposed to try to kill Dedra. That is his mission. It doesn't happen. But in the end, after Gorman, the aftermath of that is what takes place in episode 9. And episode 9 is where we get Mon Mothma taking a stand in Senate, and Cassian is sent to go and retrieve her and take her back to get off of the planet to go to Yavin. At the time, we have one plan that is supposed to be these 3 people are going to take Mon Mothma and get her off planet. And that is basically Luthen figures out that those people have been compromised. There's a whole bunch of spycraft that is happening in this sequence. It's really, really well done. But Cassian ends up getting Mon Mothma off planet after giving a speech at the Senate. and then completely gets her to the point where she can give. And they thread this needle very carefully. She ends up giving the speech that we see in Rebels. That is the big call out of how the rebels are brought together across the universe. And then we are at the end game. We end up in this situation where we see Luthen get basically trapped by Dedra. She comes into his store, brings a piece of one of the things he has been stockpiling and sharing to support the rebellion, and he ends up stabbing himself. Kayla, his adopted daughter, and the woman who's been at his side the whole time, we get to see more and more of who she is and how she got where she is. The payoff on that is unbelievable, but we see that she's become this amazing. She could have been a huge asset to the rebellion out in the field, but she was the one who was basically running things from the anchor within Luthen's shop. And we see this over and over again throughout what she's able to accomplish. So Luthen is saved, taken to a hospital. They're going to torture him and they're going to make him speak. Kayla finds her way to the hospital, breaks in, blows up something adjacent to the hospital, puts on nurse scrubs, makes her way, finds her way to Luthen, and eventually takes him off of life support. It's unbelievable. It's so moving and powerful. And then she breaks back into the one of the safe houses where we saw previously Cassian and Bix, and she breaks through the wall and pulls out an old time radio, puts it back together, and then sends out basically to everyone that she needs help across the universe. And that person who shows up is Cassian. He basically steals a ship, leaving Yavin with K2SO. Finally, we saw K2SO during the Gorman extraction. Those droids were on attack. One of them gets destroyed. Cassian takes it back with him to Yavin. Now we have K2SO. K2SO helps fly, gets them back to Coruscant. They've broken all kinds of rules to get there, and in the end, we see the Empire basically zone in on this building where this radio transmission is coming from. It all is this very extremely tense, sort of well plotted moment where, in the end, K2SO is able to kill every Imperial stormtrooper who is between him and Cassian to get them out. We get everyone back to Yavin, and we are now at the point where everyone on Yavin who is slowly building this rebellion is trying to have more structure to it, and it is getting more and more complicated because Cassian is a person who has been a rebel, not a leader of the future rebellion. And he gets basically there is a person on the ground that is sending a message that only Cassian is allowed to hear. So they allow Cassian to leave, and he leaves for the last time. And we see him in the exact outfit that we're about to pick him up on the other end when he lands to receive that message. So, Tony Gilroy had talked about the fact that like you could watch this right up to the moment and then turn on Rogue One and it would continue. And I am so glad that that's the way it went. I think it's so beautiful to see something with the constraints that this had on it tell a story, paint inside and outside the lines without obscuring or making anything that happened or came before not important. This is one of those moments where I talked about it in the past where I felt like Solo made the world smaller. We didn't need to see the Kessel Run. It didn't make it better. In this case, seeing everything that led up to the beginning of Rogue One, which is basically giving us everything that led up to A New Hope, has made all of these stories more important. And I felt like Rogue One may have been the best thing that's been created in the Star Wars universe in the last 20 years. And I now think that Andor takes that spot with Rogue One coming second. I really cannot believe how good this show was and how much it played a combination of new and old and nostalgia and excitement for me as a person who's grown up on Star Wars. I was born in 1974. I grew up with, at the time, it was not home box office, but WHT, Warner Home Theater. And when I was about 7 years old, I think that they only had about 10 movies that played on WHT on a monthly basis. And Star Wars A New Hope was the one of the movies that was in that for a year. So I watched that. And I think the next year it was Empire Strikes Back. So both of those movies had come out before I saw them in the theater. And then I went to the theater to see Return of the Jedi. So I have been a long time Star Wars person. I have 2 Star Wars tattoo logos on my leg. Star Wars is a really important aspect of my nerd culture and made me who I am. And this is an adult version of the things that I grew up loving. So, yeah, you should watch Andor if you haven't. There's no way I could cover it in any detail. This is such a huge show with so many nuances. But I give you all of that to say it is well worth the time, energy, and effort you can put into it. And if you go and look on IMDb, you can see that this season, the lowest rated episode is 7.9. And there are, I think, 6 episodes that are rated 9 and above, or 7 episodes that are rated 8 and above. It's really unbelievable. The high level television making that's happened here, and the growing of this mythology in ways that we didn't think were possible when we saw A New Hope, and that Rogue One eventually helped with, and now this has led up to that. There's nothing better than making something that you love better, and this is what we're doing. This is like adding salt to a well-cooked meal, so we get more of that flavor. It was unbelievable. Okay, here we go. I am ready to give you my Mission Impossible Final Reckoning review. I'm glad I had a ton of good television to talk about, because this movie was an utter disappointment. I am sad to say. According to our friends at IMDb, our lives are the sum of our choices. Tom Cruise is Ethan Hunt in Mission Impossible Final Reckoning, is what this is listed as. It is directed by Christopher McQuarrie. It is influenced by Bruce Geller's original show, and written by Eric Jenderson and Christopher McQuarrie. We're going to jump over to my review that I have on Letterboxd, and then I'll flesh it out even further. I gave this 2 stars. The film is held back because of the fact that the actors seem to know, and the characters seem to know, that this is the final reckoning. Everything is overly dramatic and sentimental. There are far too many stories running at the end of this film, 4 by my count, and it keeps bouncing from storyline to storyline, trying for them to have the same level of tension for high-flying Ethan as the president in a bunker, the crew just outside the room where another group, Benji and company, are doing their thing. The audience I saw this film with laughed at least 4 different times during the movie at moments of Ethan surviving or choosing to do something that no human could survive. These laughs weren't releases of tension. They were disbelief and acknowledgement of absurdity. Take nothing away from Tom Cruise and his death-defying stunts. They are impressive, but at 2 hours and 49 minutes, I was emotionally spent and exhausted by a film. I wouldn't classify that as a good thing. Haley Atwell is great, and Pom Klementieff is fun as a super intense murder bot. The additions of Nick Offerman, Hannah Waddington, Tremel Tillman, and Katie O'Brien are fun, but most don't have enough screen time in this overstuffed film. Finally, for the first 20 minutes to feel like a serious exposition dump, or previously on, because it's the second part of a 2-part film, title be damned. I wish they had believed the audience would know the current state of play in the Mission Impossible verse. They could have shortened this down to a 3 to 4 minutes of where the world is since the end of Dead Reckoning. So Tom Cruise is playing Ethan Hunt. Haley Atwell is back as Grace. This movie is going to have spoilers galore, right? Like, I can't talk about this without spoilers. Luther is back, Ving Rhames, but he is sick, seems to be apparently dying, and that is a overly nostalgic, very moving moment for the 2 of them, but it feels heavy-handed. Simon Pegg is back as Benji. Esai Morales is playing Gabriel. Pom Klementieff is playing Paris. Back with Henry Cesarin as Kittredge. Holt McClaney is Searling. Janet McTeary is Walters. Nick Offerman is General Sidney, the Secretary of Defense. Hannah Waddington is Admiral Neely. Trammell Tillman is Captain Bledsoe. That man is walking charisma. Angela Bassett is President Erica Sloan. Shea Wiggum is back as Briggs. We find out that he is related to John Voight's character. Again, I don't know that I needed that. Tarzan Davis is playing Degas. Charles Parnell is playing Richards. Matty Gatos is playing Angstrom. Rolf Saxton is playing William Dunlow. I joked, I did a instant reaction, and I said that this movie has a lot of villains. It has Gabriel, who is chewing up all the scenery. He is as caricature-esque as you can get as a villain. And then you have the entity, which is playing sort of, is being used as the sort of heavy AI created monster. It is like cartoon version of what AI can be, and the cartoon villainry that you can map onto artificial intelligence. But I think the biggest villain in this movie is the script. I think this movie is way sappy, way overly sentimental. It has too many storylines and too many opportunities for us as an audience to feel the weight and time that is being spent on this movie, not in a propulsive way. There are long stretches of this movie where I was genuinely bored. And that is saying something, considering it was 2 hours and 49 minutes, and there are like 5 or 6 major action set pieces. But like, when you get through all of what's going on, each of the set pieces is maybe like 5 to 10 minutes, but there's like 10 to 15 minutes of preamble and setup for us to get there. There's an unbelievable amount of useless nostalgia is the way I would put it. I mean, William Dunlow coming back, and that is the person that in Mission Impossible, was it 2 or 1, that Ethan Hunt stole the knock list from the room inside of the CIA. I mean, it's a clever component. I like the fact that like we got him back. It's one of the fun nostalgia pieces, but it wasn't necessary. And in the end, it was like closed a fun loop, but that would have been one fun one for us to have instead of all of the other things. You know, there's a moment where Haley Atwell gives like this really emotional, touching speech synopsizing what's going on as Grace. And I wrote in my notes, like, Haley Atwell is too good for this movie right now. Like, she is so genuine and empathetic and caring. And it just felt like this movie is like a caricature-esque place for this story to be hung upon. I take nothing away from Tom Cruise. The man is, he is a master of creating his own myth, and the fact that he is able to do everything he's able to do in this movie is really unbelievable. But there's a fight sequence where Grace has been taken, and so has Ethan, and the fight takes place off camera. And it's fun to hear the fight happening and us not to have to see Ethan fight 3 people. And it got a genuine laugh in my audience. Not like a critical laugh. This was a fun laugh. This is like, we know Ethan's a badass. We don't need to see him fighting these people. And even Grace has this moment of like, oh, cool. It's cool, safe. Yeah. Like, she's a little surprised that it happened. There could have been so much more of that. We could have allowed, you know, this character and these stories to ebb and flow in a way that gave us all a little bit of a nod towards the fact that Tom Cruise is this great practitioner of stunts and dramatic storytelling through that type of creation. But it didn't have to be every single component of this. There are like I said, I think there are 5 or 6 major stunt pieces in this movie, and each of them has power. But by the end, I was just tired. And I felt like every time we got to a new set, it was like, hey, look at these cool people that we get to spend 3 minutes getting to know, instead of us spending more time. Like, having us have to go and get onto a ship that was going to go then find its way to a submarine that was going to then get us to this place that was, there's just so much convoluted logic to this happening. You know, at one point, there's this moment where Tom Cruise tells Captain Bledsoe, Trammell Tillman, that he needs him to drop him off. And he's like, you know, if we're not here, how are you going to survive? And he was like, you were never part of the overall plan for my survival. And Captain Bledsoe just goes, Mister, in this very charming way. I wish we had more time with him or with Hannah Waddingham or with getting to know Nick Offerman as the Secretary of Defense. Or there's so many amazing actors in this movie that, it's basically just throwing anybody they can to fill small character roles with big names because they have the money to do it. It just did not deliver what I was hoping. And I really am not a person who's against these movies. There's some of these movies I really, really admire. Even like Mission Impossible 2, which is one that most people don't really like, I'm on board. I've watched all these movies multiple times. I really like 3, but that's because I'm in the bag for Philip Seymour Hoffman. And I think his dramatic character, his scary component of being a guy who's not going to physically fight you, but is going to hurt you is amazing. I was disappointed. And I really wish that this movie had taken a step back and said, like, what is the right way to close out this story, as opposed to, now that we know we're closing this story out, how do we hit on so many beats that will make the audience point at the screen rather than tell a good story? And that's what feels like it's missing. They've also really never done a 2-part story in the Mission Impossible world. And I think that really hurt this movie. The idea that they couldn't close out the last movie in a way that allowed this movie to happen without the baggage of the previous movie. And I know that the whole plan was that they were going to do a 2-parter, it felt like, to close the story out. But there's no guarantee this is the end of this. And there's no, like, that's the other piece of this is like, yeah, I mean, I guess here's final spoiler. Like, people walk away. We get Tom Cruise at the end. You get these characters are all alive. And so we always have this possibility of them coming back together. I wish they had been more definitive. I wish that we had a situation where we could know that Ethan did the biggest thing you could do to save the planet. And I think it's the way that we see he's alive after the crash to the ground, that got a laugh from my audience. And that sucks. This series deserved a better send-off, is the way I would put it. If this is the send-off. I thought it was. All right, I'm going to stop talking. I really hope that people see this movie because it does have amazing stunts and it does have some amazing actors getting a chance to be a part of this world. It just didn't resonate with me and it didn't land the way I was hoping it would. Maybe it's on me. Maybe I'm judging the movie for what it wasn't instead of what it was, but I can't take away how I was feeling. I look forward to talking to you again soon. I don't even know what's up next. I was lucky enough to get in to see this early, so I was ready to rock and roll when this time came about. Please follow along with everything that's going on at geekonfilm.com. You can find me everywhere as Robbie the Geek, and I hope that you would like, subscribe. Please share this with your friends and family. Comment. I look forward to your interactions. Thank you so much, and have a great day. This has been a Geek on Film podcast. Thanks for joining us. See you next time.